we talked about the Oscars,
Yep.
and I was promised a Wicked medley. Okay, that was what was going to open the show, is a medley of the songs from the Wicked movie. And Ariana Grande comes out singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Fine, homage to the original. Cynthia Erivo then comes out and she sings "Home" from the musical The Wiz. Again, also Wizard of Oz adjacent, but not Wicked. And then they go to the very end of Defying Gravity. I'm like, I was expecting a medley, meaning you do a little, tell me if I'm wrong, but a medley is not a 3-song set. A medley is a mashup of several songs.
Yeah, but I see how with their loose definition, you sort of still get medley.
It would have been fine if I wasn't promised something else. That's my issue.
What's more interesting to me is that you heard Promise and you took it to the bank.
Because this is a huge movie that is wildly popular. So I just assumed that they were going to follow through. This feels like in a time when so many promises are being broken by people in power to the people under them. This felt like such an easy one to keep, and yet you let me down. And it hurts me. It hurts me on a deep personal level.
I'm sorry. Anything I can do to make it better?
Well, you can kick off this show.
Let's do it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sanctum Sanctorum Podcast, where comics and Christ culture collide. I am host number 1, Joey.
And I am host number 2, Chris.
We're excited that you're here. Thanks so much for listening. On this show, we take comic book movies or comic content found in film, and we look for good stuff, bad stuff, and spiritual stuff, all within these said films. Chris, given your downer of a Monday that you're experiencing post Oscars, anything we can do to make it better?
Well, I think what we could do to make it better is we could discuss our cultural moment that we have, given the movie we're doing this week, which is the animated film from 2008, I believe, The Batman versus Dracula. So I think what we want to talk about is when IP crossovers work and when they don't. Now, an IP is an intellectual property, and what we're referring to is when we have movies or books or comics or stories where you take two characters that would normally be completely unrelated in completely different worlds and you blend them together to tell one story. I think that it can work sometimes. I think that a lot of times they try to, shoehorn it together and it doesn't always work. So I have some thoughts, but what is your experience with kind of crossover material? Do you read a lot of that or watch a lot of that?
I don't. I actually had to think, what's the first crossover IP that I can remember? And believe it or not, it's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I grew up on the old TV shows, I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, Abbott and Costello, Honeymooners, you name it. That was sort of like, if it was black and white, it was probably deemed as wholesome, and therefore I was allowed to watch it. And so as I started watching more Abbott and Costello and experienced some of their TV shows, then I crossed over into the movies. And the movies, one of the big ones that you can remember is they meet people. They met the Invisible Man, they met the Wolfman. Notably, they met Frankenstein. And in Frankenstein, they also meet Dracula. They meet the Wolfman. The Invisible Man shows up at the end. It's one of my favorite movies. But that was the first time where I was like, those two are totally different realms, and yet they're meeting in a way that sort of is cohesive. The story makes sense, but you just sort of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit that, you know, I think a lot of times we sort of put these IPs in categories, like this is the sci-fi one and this is the real one, and this one could probably happen but not really, and this one definitely does happen. And when you get to cross them over, what you're really doing is saying, what parts of my brain have I compartmentalized that now the wall gets to get broken down? And from that point, I've sort of started to see it more. If I'm honest, I haven't really enjoyed it. I haven't really enjoyed when the IPs cross over because I like my categories. I do like being able to say, well, this is the world of Dune, or this is the world of Star Wars, this is the world of DC, this is Marvel, this is Narnia, this is Lord of the Rings. Don't mix them together, because I think there's a legit concern that says I take a lot of emotional energy to get my head wrapped around this world. And if you're asking me to now take both of these things and just put them together, I don't think I'm as invested. I don't think I care as much because I have to do more work.
Yes, I would say that that's true. I think it's the investment is part of the problem. Now,
Yeah.
I will say that you have your kind of cultural touchstone characters that you see used a lot in crossovers. Dracula would be one of them. Sherlock Holmes you see a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, again, sometimes the stories work, sometimes they don't. Now, I'm an avid Sherlock Holmes fan, and I've
Same.
read stories of him crossing over with Dracula, with the Cthulhu mythos, with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, with Houdini, the Phantom of the Opera, all these different, all these different other either historical figures or crossovers. But I think the difference is that they kind of take place around the same time. Like they may not
Sure.
inhabit the same stories, but they kind of all live in a specific time period and world. And so that makes it a little bit easier to digest it. Now, one thing that I didn't like was they had a crossover between the DC universe and Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes separately. So some of the stories were okay. Some of the stories were less than okay. I think the only one that really worked for me was Batman and Elmer Fudd.
What?
Because they made Elmer Fudd this like gritty barfly who has been like beaten down by the world. That was the only one that kind of worked because it was this kind of serious take on it. But like,
Do we need a serious take on Elmer Fudd?
no, and that's the thing. Like, it was, I guess it was a fun idea, but the execution was weird. And that was the only story that worked. A lot of the other ones were, things like Space Ghost working with the Green Lanterns and Wonder Woman working with Petunia Pig as I don't know, Wonder Pig. And those just don't work for me. I feel like what happens is that, yes, you're not invested, but what I also feel like happens is both parties suffer by doing it. So, you take, Batman, and you like Batman because he's this gritty, realistic, violent character. There's a lot of psychological stuff. There's these ideas of family and vengeance and mercy. And then you have, Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. It's lighthearted, it's fun, it's slapstick, it's made you laugh for the last, 70, 80, 90 years. Why, like now this over here is less funny, and this over here feels less gritty and real. And now you've kind of like, not ruined, because I can just not read it and be fine, but in looking at this story, you've cheapened and kind of hurt both of these characters.
It's sort of like when Scooby-Doo has met other intellectual properties, because I know he has. Same thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, they've done. Now that's one where I think it kind of walks the line. Like the Ninja Turtles and Batman together is a little weird, but workable.
And what's interesting, too, is like that one in particular. Let's take that one. They both fight crime. They're both underworld. They're gritty. But I would never put them together.
No, because it feels unbelievable. It feels unbelievable. And I feel like it hurts both stories.
But even to my point, there's a part of my psyche that says nobody's doing what Batman is actually doing. But there's enough of a reality that says I can connect with this here. Ninja Turtles are all the way down here. Like, there's no way that that's ever going to happen. So I just want to be mindlessly entertained here. But this one I sort of want to think about. When you put them together, it's like, well, I can't do either now.
Yeah. Now, what's weird about Ninja Turtles and Batman is I think that, like, Batman fighting the Shredder and the Foot Clan, I think can work. No problem. I think Shredder could be a Batman villain without a lot of issue. I also think that a lot of Batman's rogues gallery, like Clayface and the Penguin and some of these other guys, could be Ninja Turtle villains pretty seamlessly. I just don't think connecting the heroes, I think that's the problem. I think they could fight each other's villains and be mostly okay, but I think connecting the heroes together is a little strange.
Well, the other thing, too, you brought up Sherlock Holmes. Like, Sherlock Holmes could probably happen in real life. So the fact that DC is now self-aware enough of the real world, it's almost like it's almost Deadpool-ish to say, oh yeah, that Ryan Reynolds character, that Hugh Jackman character, when the hero of the comic is now referencing my world, you've lost me. Unless it's understood that this is Deadpool and he breaks the fourth wall.
Well, we've talked about that on a previous episode. The idea of, like, is it a comic books or comic book movie's job to address things that are happening in the real world?
Yeah.
You know, so it's again, depending on how much you do it and what you do it with, it can start to become a little wonky. But
yeah,
I think that when it boils down to it, I think that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I also think it kind of depends on your attachment to the characters that are being used for this crossover. Do you have a love for both characters? So it's like, oh my goodness, it's like my world's colliding. I love it. If you only like one, not so much the other, you're thinking, why are they putting this person in the midst of this ridiculous, this other ridiculous world? Like, this is completely unbelievable. So, I mean, I think it's dependent, but as we get into today's movie, I personally feel like this is one that doesn't work, is Batman and Dracula. I don't think the idea of it really comes together the way that they maybe wanted it to.
Well, we're going to find out today, and I got a plot synopsis that will batarang your heart to liking this movie.
Doubtful, but why don't you go ahead and give it the old college try, sir.
Give it the old Sanctum try. Foreboding music cued. Here we go. Joker and Penguin break out of Arkum in a race to dig up some buried cash at Gotham Cemetery. Because why rob a bank when you can commit grave robbery? Joker dies, but Penguin accidentally resurrects Dracula with a single drop of blood, officially becoming the first man in history to lose a fight to his own paper cut. Yeah, that happens. Dracula, now undead and unimpressed, makes Penguin his mind-controlled vampire minion, while Batman decides it's not his problem and hosts a party instead. Dracula crashes the event under the genius alias of Dr. Alucard. And since Gothamites couldn't identify Batman if he introduced himself, they assume that he's the vampire. Now balancing Vicky Vale's affections, Dracula's appetites, and the Joker getting turned into a low-budget Nosferatu, Batman must use his brain, brawn, and fangs to save Gotham from lurking into the shadows and becoming Transylvania 2005. Will Batman be able to garlic Gotham and return to standing on rooftops, judging people, or is this the final nail in the coffin? In the worst treasure hunt ever, Batman versus Dracula. Dun, dun, dun. How do you say that name?
Nosferatu.
Nosferatu?
Nosferatu.
Clearly, it's the first time I've ever tried to say it as an adult.
Apparently. But I need to make one correction. This is
No, you don't.
The Batman versus Dracula. And this is part of the Batman animated series universe. Not the Bruce Timm one. Listen. Not the Bruce Timm one. This is its own cartoon called The Batman from like 2005.
Throw whatever adjective in there, it's not going to fix it.
Listen, I'm differentiating between different Batman movies because we have with the animated movies it's Batman, the Batman, a Batman,
Yep.
all this kind of stuff. But this particular one stars Reno Romano, Tara Strong, Peter Stormare, Tom Kenny, Kevin Michael Richardson, and is directed by Michael Goguen.
Let's talk about the very few good in this movie.
Before we get to the good, do you have any other?
Nope.
Okay, I have one other, and this is kind of, again, this is one of those things that's not really specific to this movie. It's kind of a Batman problem.
Okay.
Arkham is the least secure place in the entire world.
That's the point. Everybody breaks in and out of it.
It's like every Batman story, it's like, oh, so, Penguin escaped from Arkham again, Two-Face escaped from Arkham again, Joker escaped from Arkham again. Why do they keep putting these guys there? Make a new prison.
Doesn't work.
There are actually plenty of other prisons that exist in the DC universe. There's Bel Rev. There's other places that you can put them that may be more secure, and have a psychiatrist go and visit them if that's your big thing of like, we want to cure these guys, but it's like, people keep putting them in Arkham and they keep getting out, and then, things like this happen. So
I wouldn't call that other. I would call that bad.
Yeah, but the reason it's other is because that's not specific to this movie. That's in every Batman story, is Arkham is an unsecured place. So just in general, in every Batman movie, comic, book, cartoon, fix it. Make Arkham better again.
Fix it.
Fix it. All right, but give me some good stuff.
No, why don't we do bad first?
You want to do bad first?
Unprecedented on this show.
All right. Is there a particular reason you want to do bad first?
No, because the movie's not great.
Okay. Do you want to kick us off, or shall I?
Sure. Let's kick it off. Bad stuff. I don't like Joker's voice. It's trying to be Hamill, but it's not Hamill. It's trying to be its own thing, but it's not really good. It's like a step away. It's sort of like it's sort of like The Last Jedi, where we're gonna root ourselves in something, but we're going totally the other way, and we're just gonna use the skin to sort of prop up what we want. It just didn't work for me. I don't like his voice.
I hate everything about this Joker. I hate absolutely all of it. I didn't like him in the show. When he first appears in the show, he's dressed like a clown, like he has on this like purple and yellow striped straitjacket, and he moves around like a monkey. Like he does this like whole Tarzan kind of thing. He's weirdly disproportionate. I don't know why he has bare feet. I don't like the hair. I don't like the color of the eyes. I don't like the teeth. I don't like anything about, you're right, the voice is a little, and then Kevin Michael Richardson is a great voiceover actor, but I think this was the wrong character for him. Or just the voice he picked, I don't know, but I don't like any of it. I hate the Joker in this world.
And it's at this point in the episode our listeners are going, then why the heck did you guys watch it? We're getting there.
Because we have to.
It's boring in places. I like the concept. I think the concept is cool, but it just drags. It never delivers. And the big sin of this movie that I found offensive was its script dumps. It tells, but it doesn't show. And it does that because it has a lot to cover to get the audience up to speed. But at some point, you're just like, all right, it's going to tell me what I need to know in 5, 4. Yep, there it is. But it doesn't show me anything. And so, like, That's one thing to do in a regular film when you have to move story along.
Mhm.
This is animated. Like, the whole point is to show, and it doesn't do that.
Yep. Boring. I have that actually in big bold letters here. Boring.
Boring. I don't know how Batman is just punching vampires.
Why
Because
not?
he's Batman? Why not? The triad electric guitar got old after a while. If our listeners haven't watched it, maybe every 5 minutes there's this little guitar lick. And although I liked the Romani violin whenever Dracula had some dialogue, the sound editing was a little forced.
Yeah, okay.
Particularly when it came to the music.
Those were all touchstones of the show that this movie takes place within. Is that's how they did kind of scene changes in the animated series, was that, you know, that 3-tone guitar rip.
Yeah.
And that was just so they, you know, that was how they were used to doing their version of Batman stories, was doing that as scene transition. It's the same as like the scene change, having the bats fly across the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's okay when you're watching it for 20 minutes in an episode. It's less okay when it's an hour and a half.
In comic book movies, sometimes there's a WTF moment. What the flip is happening? Like, what am I watching?
Mm-hmm.
That happened to me in the theater of Multiverse of Madness, and it happened in Thor: Love of Thunder. It happened in this movie too, where, particularly because of the medium crossover, I'm watching it, and all of a sudden, like, Batman is resurrecting the undead with his special baddie serum. And then there's a seance happening in the background, and you just stop and you say, like, what the heck is going on? Like, you're on board up until a certain point, and then you grab a drink, you come back to the movie, and you're like, what the flip? Like, oh, this is stupid.
Also not sure why when he was curing people, they were like these freeze frames. Like, why weren't you just showing him, like, inject, inject, inject? Like, it was like these, like, still shots of, like, boom, this one's cured, boom, this one's cured, boom, this one's cured. That was dumb.
Animation.
That's the thing. It wasn't animated. It was just a drawing at that point.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying, like, the medium is animation, so they tried to stylize it.
Well, that made it so much less interesting to watch. That didn't help the situation. That made it worse. It would have been better if you just didn't do that.
Yeah. I don't like how Crime Alley is used in this movie. You know, like, the line is, no human can withstand my will unless Batman gets a flashback to when his parents died.
But even then, he didn't.
Oh, yeah?
He didn't really withstand Dracula's will, and I think that his mind should have been stronger to do that. But my goodness, like, I cannot take any more of Batman's origin in a movie. We get it. We get it. You're scarred. We know what happened. We're watching. Listen, a movie like Batman versus Dracula, really any of the animated DC movies, it's one thing if you're, I guess, it's one thing if you're going to the theaters as a regular consumer and you're going and seeing the new Batman movie, that maybe you need a reminder, though, after, after the first one in '89 all the way through to what we have now, I think everybody knows Batman's origin. We don't need it. Stop doing it. Stop putting it in stuff. Stop putting it in every Batman story.
Right.
It's boring.
We're on board. Last thing I have as far as bad stuff is one line, and I hate it with a passion.
I hope it's not the line I got my spiritual stuff from.
I doubt it's the Prince of Darkness. Yeah, it's the Prince of Darkness. We know. It's like, just like, I don't know who this film was aimed at. Is it aimed at the fanboys like us? Is it aimed at children? Is it aimed at geriatrics? Like, who is this for?
So the movie is a little more confusing than the show. The show was definitely aimed at a younger audience, because later in the show they have a young Dick Grayson, they have a teenage Batgirl. Batman is supposed to be like in his mid to late 20s. So this is early in Batman's career, this universe. And and it has the introduction of a lot of his major villains. So the show was aimed at probably a tween audience. Your 10 to 13-year-olds is probably who the core um, demographic they wanted to hit.
Yeah.
They wanted to make the movie a little more adult, which is why they have like blood in the movie. It's a little more violent than the show was. You're dealing with vampires that drink people's blood. You're dealing with, Dracula eating someone's soul, all this kind of nonsense. And
It's a bit
so
more
I think that they were trying to get
adult.
a older audience to maybe watch this and be like, oh, this is cool, and go back and watch the show if they didn't already.
But this is not.
But it did not do that. And that's it for your bad?
That's all I got.
Oh, I have so many more things.
I mean, sure, we could nitpick, but...
Oh, I'm about to nitpick.
It's crap. We know it's crap.
But you mentioned it in your plot synopsis. Alucard, Dr. Alucard, come on. And the fact that Batman didn't figure that out immediately.
Some great detective.
Yeah, not feeling that. This, I think, may have been a better story with a different animation style. Like if they told
See, I liked the style.
Oh, I've never been a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of it in the show either. So I personally feel like Batman versus Dracula could be an interesting idea if you set it in like the DC animated universe, or you set it in Bruce Timm's Batman universe. Any of those, I think it would have and could have worked better. In this world that they live in a world where all of these costumed freaks live, okay? You got the Joker, the Penguin, you got Clayface, you got all these kind of guys. Why are vampires so unbelievable? Like, why is that outside the realm of people's, the possibility of like this could be real? You know what I mean?
Because, and I'll dispute that one, because they're held in the same regard in our world. Some people are like, oh yeah, totally real. Other people are like, nope, not a thing.
Right, but if you had also lived, if the city that you lived in also saw monsters that can transform into anything, had seen ghosts that rob banks, had seen, freaks dressed up like clowns, a guy with half his face burned, mad scientists, you wouldn't lean into the, like, your first reaction would be like, I mean, I know I've seen all this crazy, but vampires, quit playing, come on.
That's the difference between the physical and the spiritual realm. 100%, because those are a bunch of freaks playing dress up for their personal gain, power, property, money, they're trying to get all of that, and Batman fights that. But now you're talking about a supernatural threat. That's totally different.
I guess. I felt like you should, not you, like the Gothamites, the people that live in that world, should be a little more open to the possibility here.
Well, maybe that's your spiritual content.
Why is Dracula buried in Gotham?
Because
he needs to be. And, I believe that he's buried in Gotham for the same reason that Wayne Tech happens to be developing a huge solar storage machine.
If I can't say Nosferatu, you can't say solar.
Solar. But, like, come on. Like, that seems...
Agreed.
Stupid.
OMG science.
I hate the design of Wayne Manor. The outside of the building.
I didn't even pay attention to it.
It's, again, I'm nitpicking a little bit, but like it looks like an office building. So where other Wayne Manors you've seen have been tall but also very wide and deep in their design, this is like 4 windows across, and it goes up like 7 levels. Like,
right, it's main skyrise, not main Wayne Manor.
Yeah, it's not Manor. Yeah, it's Wayne skyscraper. It's a very strange choice. Again, it's kind of OMG magic more than OMG science, but Dracula has to eat Vicky Vale's soul in order for the soul of Camilla to be put into her body, but how does he eat the soul? Is he just eating like her essence? Is he biting her
That was
like
the
that?
part of the movie where I was like, yeah, sure. Just land the plane. Whatever you need to do, just land the plane.
Yeah, I didn't really get on that. I have three other things.
A lot of these are not like problems. These are just you didn't like what was offered.
Well, okay, well, some of it I didn't like what was offered. Some of it, one of these I think is a real problem. I'll save the one that I think is
Okay.
a real Batman problem. Didn't love Vampire Joker. I thought the vampire version of Joker was
Dumb.
weird, and again, I feel like it's degrading one of the greatest villains in all of fiction,
if not the greatest villain in all of fiction, and you just now he needs to drink blood because that's the narrative of the story. Yeah.
And then they bathe him in blood in that blood bank that looks like a converted church. The whole thing was weird.
Nope. We'll cancel you.
The whole thing was weird. Also, Batman. So here's the two things I have that are Batman issues where I think this was a writing problem. Batman is using the Joker as his litmus test for this cure. The Joker's blood is so tainted by toxins and by poisons and drugs that he has put into his system that worked with the change and the stuff that's happened to him at Arkham. His blood cannot be treated as the same blood as Vicky Vale or the cemetery security guard. Like, just because you did something that fixes his tainted blood doesn't mean it's going to work on your normal everyday person. Why do you disagree?
I disagree.
Go ahead.
Because, again, it's a spiritual versus physical thing. In Batman's mind, if the worst, most tainted, vile human creature can convert with the serum, then anybody can.
But no, this is a science. He's not trying to fix the Joker's mind. This is a scientific problem. If the most it's like trying to cure cancer with cold medicine.
Well, but the problem with the movie is that the approach to vampirism is that it's a spiritual thing. It's a supernatural thing, and it also has scientific properties. I'm going to lean more towards he thinks it's a supernatural thing, and therefore this is a scientific remedy to that. Again, it's not airtight, but I'm just propagating that you have to decide which is this. Is this a spiritual thing, or is this a physical thing?
I don't know. I feel like that's a loose thread to hang this on.
Yes, absolutely. And Batman picks and chooses when it's going to be convenient. But I think the reason he went after Joker was, one, because we know the character. But two, if you want to take it down that road a little bit, if the worst of the worst can get cured, then anybody can.
I guess. Also, did you notice that? Have you ever? Well, I know. I'm sure you've seen one of the many hundreds of Dracula movies, but have you ever read the Dracula book?
No.
Okay.
This
is basically just Dracula with Batman characters. It's basically the story of Dracula. Penguin is Renfield. Vicky Vale is Mina Harker, Mina Harker. So it's like you're not really blending these IPs. You're just telling the story in a new setting. You're telling it in Gotham instead of Transylvania.
I know there's no such person as Dracula. You know there's no such person as Dracula. But does
Dracula know there's no such person? Yes.
I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula. But does Dracula know it?
All right, my last bad thing is a character flaw of Bruce Wayne, who does not see himself as Batman.
That's a big problem.
Bruce Wayne in his purest form. There's this great comic in the Trinity comic title that they did for a while, where the Trinity is introducing themselves to each other, and Superman grabs the
Trinity being
Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, the DC Trinity. Superman grabs the lasso of truth and says, "My name is Clark Kent." Wonder Woman grabs the lasso of truth and says, "I'm Diana, daughter of Themyscira." Batman grabs it and says, "I'm Batman."
I'm Batman.
And yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. Bruce Wayne is the mask. Batman is who he is, and
There are just some immutable
that's not
facts that
present.
have to cross over no matter what version you're telling. And he doesn't see himself as Bruce Wayne. He sees himself as Batman.
Yes, Bruce Wayne is the costume. Batman is the uniform, and that's his skin. That's who he is.
Right. So if you're gonna use the skin, so to speak, of Batman to tell this story, at least have the touchstones.
That was my biggest problem. Was that
I agree with you.
And I get that he's still young. I get that this takes place in a world where this is a young Batman, and he's still developing as a hero and as a character. But that's something that should be, at the very least, should be hinted at. And it wasn't even hinted at. It was just like any other guy who puts on a mask and thinks they can fight crime, which Batman is not.
Yeah.
So that was a problem for me.
I like it. That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
It's good. Why don't we take a break? I got a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back in a minute with some good stuff.
See ya!
You know how sometimes you accidentally resurrect an ancient vampire while digging for treasure? Or maybe you just crossed paths with someone named the Impaler. Either way, you're bleeding.
In there.
Enter Dr. Alucard's Bandaids, the only adhesive strip guaranteed to keep your blood inside your body where it belongs. Featuring a bat-strong hold, because vamps can smell weakness. It's hypoallergenic, no silver, no garlic needed, and it comes in 2 stylish gothic designs, pairing well with capes and brooding. Dr. Alucard's Bandaids, because if you're still bleeding, you might not be you for long. Available wherever dramatic lightning strikes are sold.
That one might be my favorite.
That was a good one.
A good one. That was fun.
Because bleeding is so last century. I had that one too, but I didn't go for it.
Again, not a real product. I wish it was. I would invest in Alucard Bandaids. Are you kidding me?
I actually have some good things. It's not a lot, but there's some good stuff in here.
This just happened to be sitting on my desk here, and I just want to point out that we hated the design of this Joker. That's what the Joker is supposed to be. Let's be real.
That is not. No.
Look at it. That's the Joker.
It's something.
All right, give me some good.
I love how Dracula turns into Hot Topic confetti at the end. That was cool.
Was it, though?
The best joke. Yes, it was. The best joke in the entire movie is breakfast in bed, fresh squeezed. It was so cringy and so stupid, but it was like, it made me laugh. Like I said before, I think it's very stylized. I like the animation style. I like the music. I like the color. It's all very unique and it's cohesive to itself. It's new. Like if you've never experienced this version of the IP, it's new, but it's also familiar at the same time. And I liked how they did that. And the last thing is the voice actors. I mean,
that
Peter Stormare is awesome here. Tara Strong is a legend. Good. Like the vocal presence that they bring to these characters. Yeah, they got a garbage script. Yeah, it's not great. But what they did with it is very
I would
good.
watch Peter Stormare in a live. If they ever did this live action, you can make Peter Stormare the live action Dracula, and I'd buy that 100%.
Absolutely. And that's the end of my good.
And Tom Kenny, who's the voice of the Penguin and probably other like side characters, is probably most known for being the voice of SpongeBob.
Huh. What do you know?
And now if you watch an episode of SpongeBob, then go back or go to the show and watch an episode with the Penguin in it, you can really hear it, especially that piratey voice. You can really hear it.
Right.
So one of the things I think that I appreciate that they tried to do was they tried to make the movie darker than the show.
Yeah.
I like that, when Batman first fights Joker in the beginning and he's like, this time I'm out for blood. That was almost like letting the audience know that, like, this time we're taking things more seriously. We're getting a little more grown up here. So, brace yourself.
Sure, if that's what you need.
I appreciate the attempt. I'm not saying it was successful, but the
Yeah.
attempt was good. I along with the Joker, I do like that they did continue the mythos of the Joker constantly cheating death.
As soon as he died in the first 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, they don't put Joker in a movie for no
Exactly.
reason.
And this has been present in every kind of Batman comic book, series, movie, video game, whatever. If the Joker is in it and he seemingly dies, he is not going to stay dead. Now, most comic book characters don't stay dead, but I feel like that's a main aspect of the Joker is that it's constantly like, how is this guy still living after everything that happens?
He's the Joker.
Another thing that I think they attempted to do that they did succeed at is that it doesn't rely on having to have watched the show to understand this world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I was fine. I've never seen the show, and I was totally
Like
content.
it's its own design, apart from any other animated Batman movie, and that's really the only thing that makes it stand out is that it's just a new, concept design, and I think that was smart because you can use this as an introduction to the show. So if you loved it, you can go back and be like, well, now I want to see more of this version of these characters. So I think that was a smart idea. I got two last things, and I'm trying to think which one I want to save for the end. That one I want to save for the end because I think you'll agree with me. The second time that Batman and Dracula fight in the cave during that like soul eating ceremony thing, I think that was not a bad fight, and it was definitely better than the first one. The first time they fight, it was kind of whatever. The second time they fight is much more entertaining, and I like the idea that Batman is like guiding the fight to where he needs it to go.
I reverse my liking of them. I don't like the second one as much as I like the first one. I like the first one because it's more intimate. And the second one, I was more distracted because of all the stuff happening on in the background.
That's true, but I think the psychology of the fight is more interesting because Batman knows what he's up against now, as opposed to the first time he just thought he was up against one of his normal wackos in a costume kind of things.
On a scale of 1 to, some days you just can't get rid of a bomb, they're both bad.
Yes.
But one is better than the other.
Yes, one is definitely better than the other. And it's interesting that we are reverse on that. The last good thing I have, and this didn't fit with other. I put it in this because it's true about this one. Alfred is never bad in every single Batman movie. Live action,
Agreed.
Animated. You take whatever you think is the worst Batman story that they've ever told on screen in animated or live action form. Alfred is still great. Even if it's the only thing that's great, Alfred is always great. Alfred is the real.
I agree.
Alfred is the real,
He's the real hero.
He's the real hero of Batman stories. So
I like it.
That's my big thing, is Alfred. But yeah, that's it for good.
And there was some spiritual content in this one.
Well, I mean, you would think there would.
Something.
You think there would be some spiritual content, given this whole movie is about somebody with eternal life and the living dead, and all this kind of stuff. Although my spiritual stuff has nothing to do with Dracula or the undead or the supernatural elements of this. So,
well, since you set that up there, Captain, why don't you go first?
All right. Well, I will. There's a scene where, to me, who I think are the two strongest characters of this movie, Alfred and Vicky Vale, are discussing Bruce while they were looking at a portrait of his parents, and Vicky is telling Alfred how Bruce keeps people at a distance because of his trauma. He's almost as if he's afraid of getting close to people because the last people that he loved were taken from him at such an early age.
What? That's new? I didn't know
that.
that.
You've never seen that before. Sorry, spoiler alert right there. My bad.
What?
Well, here's another spoiler for you. We do the same thing. We do the same thing with people in our life, but we do the same thing with God. When things are hard, or when we, when we've had a bad experience with the church, when we've had a bad experience with people who claim to love Christ, and have been poor or hurtful representations of who he is, that trauma can like sit inside of you, and it can make you not angry at people, not angry at the institution, but angry at God, because that's the source. So clearly that's where the fault should lie. But even when we feel that, God never distances himself from us. In Hebrews 13:5, it says that I will never leave you or forsake you. And in John, it says, the one who comes to me, I will not cast out. God never chooses to distance himself. He may want you to meet him, but he's right here waiting. It's not like you have to catch up to him. He's sitting and waiting. You need to come and meet him. And, Bruce has a lot of people that want to be close to him. He's got the Bat family that have tried to be close to him. Numerous, loves of Batman's life. Even Alfred, who's probably the closest thing he has to a father and mentor. All of these people want to be close to him, and he is always pushing them away. That is not something you'll ever find with God. He waits for us to kind of close the gap, but he's waiting for us to find him there. And he's never going to abandon that spot. It's just up to us to choose to close the distance.
Yeah, and it talks about in the book of James, too, that when we draw near to God, he draws near to us. And so there's never like, all right, if I do 75% of the work, he'll do 25. If I do 10, he'll do the other 90. It's like, no, his effort meets your effort with equal energy and rigor and desire. And it's really more about us going, all right, how much you putting into this? Are you pushing back like Bruce? Are you trying to self-protect even when it comes to God? I mean, because of all the legitimate pain and suffering that we have experienced, that's not to disregard that, but it's like everything you just said, God wants this.
Yeah.
Do you want this?
I think a great analogy for it, that I didn't write this down, it just kind of came as we were talking about it, is the story of the prodigal son. The end of that story, the father runs out of the home to meet the son there. It's not, he doesn't wait for the son to come in and say, I effed up here and I'm so sorry and I'm a terrible person, please forgive me. He doesn't wait for any of that. He goes out and meets him where he is, halfway up the road, when he sees him, because to him that was enough. Is like, you're coming home. That's all I want, is for you to come home. And I think that that's a great analogy, is that God will come to us, but he has to know that we want to come home first.
Yeah, another section of scripture that pops up is like, there's this paralytic man. I think it's John 5, and he's at this well, and Jesus says, "Well, do you want to get well?" And the guy sort of dances around the issue, and he's like, well, I have nobody to put me into the water. I've got all these excuses. But Jesus's question is so poignant. It's like, do you even want this? Like, yeah, I can do it, but do you want it? And I think what you're highlighting is so profound, is just like, yeah, God's willing to do all the work. God's willing to do what we can't do. And in fact, he has done what we can't do. Now, what about your part? Do you want this? Like, where's the responsibility on your side? That's such a sobering question.
And I love that example too, of this idea of like, do you want to get well? Well, I got nobody to lift me in. Not what I asked. Do you want this? Well, it's super hard. Didn't ask if it was hard. Do you want it? This is a yes or no question. I want to get well. I'm not willing to do what it takes to get well. Those are really the only two answers. And, dancing around it is not going to change that those are the answers he's looking for,
Great thought, Pastor Chris.
Oh, thank you.
I like that. Mine was very different. I do like the character of Dracula. And that's why I gave this one like more of myself, because I wanted to believe in this, because I do like the character. And he's got this line towards the end of the movie that says, no human can withstand my will. And while that's fitting for a supernatural villain, it's a very eerie statement when it comes to our human condition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dracula's victims are powerless against his influence. We see that throughout all the lore and the film. Like they have no control.
I mean, even Batman with the strongest mind, you see, falls under the spell.
Totally. And scripture tells us about ourselves that humanity is also enslaved to sin. I've been reading, if our listeners have been following, every spiritual thing for me for the last couple episodes have been rooted in the book of Romans. I've been reading through it. And in chapter 7, it talks how when we are left to our own strength, we are easily drawn in, controlled by, and corrupted by our desires. Much like, people who find themselves under vampiric hypnotizing gazes. But I was also in the book of James, and James talks about this in chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. It says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then, after desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. And so that got me thinking, like, it's very similar to vampirism. Sin doesn't just show up. It spreads, it consumes, and it ultimately destroys us. And alone, we are helpless. We are powerless. But there is hope. Back to Romans, Jesus is stronger than the desires that attempt to control us. It says in chapter 6, verse 6, for we know that our old self was crucified with him so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin. And through Jesus' death and resurrection, Jesus offers that true freedom. Jesus offers that broken grip that sin has on us. And now we have a choice, very similar to your spiritual thought. Like, okay, so what are you going to do? Are you going to allow it to reign in you? Are you going to allow it to control you and to consume you and ultimately lead to death? Or are you going to put your faith, hope, and trust in the resurrection power of Jesus and let that be the thing that compels you, controls you? We have a Savior that walks us not into darkness and leaves us there, but walks with us through darkness. It says also in Scripture that he was tempted just like we are, but without sin. And if he can resist temptation, I think so can we.
I think, let me repay the compliment here. I think that what you just said was really profound. The idea that he's not walking us into darkness. He's walking us through it. And there's a huge difference between walking into it and knowing that on the other side is light again. And, the only way out is through sometimes. But you're not walking into darkness. You're about to walk through darkness. And your trust in God, your faith in who Jesus is and what he did, that is what can cut through that darkness and allow you to get through. So I think that was really good. Really good stuff.
That's good stuff.
I think the spiritual stuff from this is so much better than the source it came from.
That's why we did it, because there's some good things in it, but now we got to rate it.
You know what I did discover?
Oh, we got to rate it.
You know what I did discover, and what made me sad
hate it?
is that this isn't a Christmas movie. Unlike so many others we watch.
Thank God.
This has no holiday feelings. I'm not even sure what time of the year it takes place in.
Chris, it's March. Get over the Christmas.
Yeah, okay. Listen, let's talk about March for a second.
Easter's
before
coming.
we get into these things. Well, and I ranted about this.
I saw your post.
Yeah, it's like, come on. Like, if I say winter holidays, you think Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, which is fair.
What about Washington's birthday, guys?
Washington's birthday, Martin Luther King, winter, spring doesn't start. I think it's like March 21st is the first day of spring or something like that.
It's late.
So St. Patrick's Day, those are all technically winter holidays. Is it getting warmer out? Are there still holiday and winter decorations up and snow? Usually not by that point, but that doesn't make them any less officially winter holidays in regards to our calendar. So I just want to say that, and
I think you're officially crazy.
Now we can rate this movie. No, people take winter away from me so often and they complain about it, and I just want as many winter holidays as I can.
Yeah, but summer's when the tattoos get to come out.
I don't want anybody to come out. I like staying in my home. I want to stay in my home and watch these movies and write about how good, bad, and Jesus-y they are. That's what I want to do.
Fair enough. I'm going to rate this.
And then I want to rate them all, so let's do it. Do you wanna grace us with yours first?
I do. I gave it a Kilmer.
Shaka.
It's a cool concept. It's done very meh. I mean, it suffers from the cross-contamination of the IPs, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's too adult in its themes for kids, and it's too cartoony for adults. It's a classic beginning of an end. You know, this is like 2005, and so what I mean by that is the 90s had some really solid animated Batman content, and that sort of died, particularly when Batman Begins came out and the resurrection of the Batman IP sort of took over. So 2005 in this is very like, I'm not interested in that. And you can tell in the writing, in the execution, in all of it. It doesn't have anything really to say except, you know, it sucks the life out of you for about 90 minutes, just like a vampire does. And so I gave it a Kilmer.
I think that's a very fair rating. And I did the exact same thing.
Twins.
For a different reason. I also gave it a Kilmer. The reason that I gave it a Kilmer is that, while I agree that the concept is interesting, and I think under other circumstances maybe it could have really worked, it just didn't. And I think I think the show is utterly forgettable, and I think this movie is utterly forgettable. Until we were talking about what movie to put here, when we said we needed to put an animated Batman movie here, I was looking through my Batman collection and was reminded of that because I saw it. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess we could do that. It's kind of a standalone feature connected to a different world. But man,
which is interesting, like, we were both drawn to the idea, and then the idea did not deliver.
No, not at all. And honestly, because, you know, we'll be working on like the editing and releasing of this episode, once we record our next episode, I will forget about this movie. It'll be in my mind because we'll be dealing with this episode coming out, but once we record our next episode, I won't even remember this movie exists. That's why it's a Kilmer for me. It's just completely forgettable until you're reminded of it.
But audience, what do you think? What do you think about said movie? Have you even seen it?
That was my question. Have you even heard of it before this?
And based on this riveting review, I doubt they'll watch it now, but give us some feedback. What do you think about the idea? What do you think about the concept? If you've seen it, leave us a comment, drop a like, share this episode. We grow because you help, and so we thank you very much for your followership, your sharing, all of your kind remarks. We really appreciate it on the show, and thank you so much. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Sanctum Pod. We are on Apple and Spotify, and as always, right here on YouTube, baby.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I think that's it. I think we're ready to close out.
That's it.
We're done. That's all our stuff. Remember, kids, vampirism is curable, except the sparkly kind. There's just no coming back from that one. John Cena, for 22 years, has been what they call a babyface, and in wrestling, that means he was a good guy. And finally, after over 20 years of Make-A-Wishes and Fruity Pebble wearing shirts and 5 moves of doom, John Cena became one of the most vicious bad guys I've ever seen in wrestling. Beat the crap out of our current champion, aligned himself with The Rock. It was something.
You could be speaking French right now, and I'd have the same level of comprehension.
John Cena, no more good guy, bad now. Big meanie now.
Oh.
It's a weird heel turn. It's weird for him to do a heel turn for his final run before retirement. That was all.
Okay, well, you know what? You shared a non-connected whatsoever thought with somebody who has no concept. I have to do the same.
Okay.
When you have daughters, Frozen just gets played all the time.
I don't know if that's only daughters. I don't know if that's daughter-centric. Plenty of little boys, I think, like Frozen too.
Time in forever.
Although I'm surprised that that's still the go-to. Like,
It's our Beauty and the Beast, where flawless on the songwriting. It's just flawless. Because even now, as I've listened to it for the umpteenth, thousandth time, I find myself like harmonizing. And you know how you sort of hum something and you're like, okay, I'm singing this because I've heard my kids sing it all the time. I'm like emoting as I sing with the harmony, where I'm like, oh yeah, she's getting what she's dreamed of for all her life. It's just not fair that her sister is like, and then I step away. I'm like, you're really into this, aren't you?